All right, next lesson. Lesson 3.7 is absolute value equations and inequalities. We are going to break this lesson into two parts. So we will take 2 days on this lesson because this is kind of a new, this is kind of some new content for algebra, okay? You've dealt with absolute value before. Let's just think about absolute value. If I asked you the absolute value of 5, you would tell me it's 5 because you remember that absolute value talks about the distance a number is on the number line away from 0. So the distance, 5, is 5 spaces away from 0. If I asked you what the absolute value of -5 is, you would still tell me that that's 5 because it is still 5 places away from 0. Okay? Distance. We need to keep that in mind. Notice I ended up with a positive and a positive for my answer. So that's how we're going to get started, is we're going to start to think about this x is 3 units away. So that means that x could equal 3, or x could equal -3. So if I put a 3 in there, absolute value of 3 is 3. If I happen to put a -3 in there, absolute value of -3 is 3. If you want to get really fancy, you could write it with the plus and the minus. Okay? Just a little bit of a review there. Now we start to see absolute value come up in equations. So we know it's an equation versus an inequality because there's an equal sign. I'm going to start solving it the way that I've always solved. What is that, 3? So I know that n could equal 3 or n could equal -3. Life is great. Love it. Okay? Now I have everything inside this absolute value equation. So I know that I could end up with a positive answer and I could end up with a negative answer. So when I have everything inside the absolute values, I break this problem into 2 separate problems. The first problem, I'm going to write exactly how it looks without the absolute value symbols. That's my first problem. Let's solve that. So x could be 5. Now, here's the second part. I'm writing the exact same problem without the absolute value symbols, but I need to change this to the opposite. So the opposite of 9 is -9. Let's go ahead and solve. So for part C, my answers are 5 and -4. Okay? D. Here's my absolute value symbol. So I have -3 times the absolute value of 2 times W equals -12. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by a -3 so I can get rid of this. And now I just have that 2W inside the absolute value. So I will break this into two problems. 2W equals 4, and 2W equals the opposite of 4. And solve those two problems. So W could equal 2, or, that's a positive, so, or W could equal negative 2. Okay? All right, here's my absolute value symbols. I need to get everything else away from them. So first of all, let's get rid of this 6 over here by adding it. And now let's get rid of this 3 by dividing. All right, now I've got everything inside my absolute value symbols so that I can break into two problems. And 5y minus 7 equals the opposite. All right, add a 7. 5y equals 17. Divide. So I know that one of my answers is y could be 17/5. Let's see what I get from this one. Or y could be negative 3/5. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but with practice, you'll get the hang of it. And by practice, I mean you try. Make sure you use pencil. All right, some absolute value problems. Starting from 100 feet away, your friend skates towards you, then passes by. She skates at a constant speed of 20 feet per second. Her distance is modeled by the equation d equals the absolute value of 100 minus 20t. At what times is she 40 feet from you? So good thing they gave us an equation to start with. Now, distance, d, she's starting from 100 feet away. That's where this came from. And here's her rate. So what times is she 40 feet from you? So that's what we're going to put in here. Okay? Now we can separate that into two problems. The first problem would look exactly like this, minus the absolute value symbols. Negative 60. So 3 seconds. And let's see the next problem. The opposite of 40 would be negative 40. Subtract a 100. Divide by negative 20. And I get 7 seconds. So at 3 seconds and 7 seconds, she is 40 feet away from you because she is skating at this rate of 20 feet per second. Here's another friend's distance. We're going to make this a U try. And we'll make this one a U try, just in case you're not having enough fun yet. For this part, for part 1 today, we are going to do one more problem. And we're going to come up with certain absolute value equations that will have no solution. So here's my absolute value. I'm going to start by adding a 5. At this point, I have everything inside my absolute value symbols, but I've ended up with a -2. Absolute value is a distance. Distance can never equal a negative quantity. So now I can stop and say no solution. But I had to get rid of that part first just to get everything inside. Let's see what happens with a problem like B. Start off the same way. I'm going to subtract a 6. But I cannot stop yet. Even though I've got a negative over here, we have to get rid of this part first just to make sure. Because what if this was a -5? Now I can stop and say the absolute value, this absolute value is not going to equal a negative. Okay? I think that's enough absolute value for this lesson. Part B will be the inequality piece. So we're going to stop with problems 1, 2, and 3 for now. I hope you have fun with these. I know I did.